You leave Draco Malfoy alone, you bastards! Hi, everyone, and welcome back to House of Bards. This is a like a once in a decade podcast about role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, ostensibly. Sometimes it's about other things, but really it's mostly just an excuse for me and Alex to just, I don't know.
I mean, this is the the 10-year reunion show, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's been the year is 2050.
Yeah.
We've
both been pulled off the other less interesting but more successful podcasts that we have since gone on to make as a sort of family trees thing, and come back to do this to indulge the nostalgia of a group of aging and balding fans.
Yeah.
I am Alex, and I'm ready to die because it's very, very hot. And I have a desk fan next to me, which I can't turn on because the sound will interfere with the audio quality. And I have a window next to me, which I can't open because the outside noises will come in and interfere with the audio quality. So I'm just going to bake to death over the course of the next 2 hours of recording. So that's fun.
I am ostensibly the reason why this podcast only happens like every now and then right now, but hopefully now it will be all the time. Again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we can even keep to our promise of not apologizing for the podcast not being regular. It's like, it has been a while. So Beth has a new computer, which is fun and good because that was one of the obstructions to like actually getting to record. One of the other obstructions was that I was still in university, and the number of times that I have had to repeat final year, I was like, I really don't want to fuck it up this time. So good news, I guess. I graduated and Beth's computer is now good and fine. So both of those obstructions are out of the way, which is going to make it even more embarrassing when we are unable to actually increase the frequency of episodes.
I would like to at least, I don't think we'll ever be able to do it weekly like we used to, but I would at least want to hope for, monthly podcasts.
Monthly podcasts is potentially a big ask because of editing. Like, I think really one of the things that I would love to be able to do is like offload the job of editing to somebody who is not quite so busy. Unfortunately, for a long time, it was presumed that would be Beth, and now that it's not. Like, Beth is actually busier than I am. So
that's really sad, isn't it? That I'm somehow busier than you. I'm busier than you, but none of it's fun. I
mean, you have a job, Beth, and that's like an obstruction to me currently. Like I do not.
It's an obstruction to me also currently. Jobs are okay if you enjoy them, but if they're not, it's
yeah. But
no.
I think the problem with that though is that any involved third party would likely want to be paid.
Mm-hmm.
More on that later. So, what was starting my sentence? Right, yes. You might be forgiven for thinking, it being such a long time since the last episode, that I would be for an episode tentatively entitled Removing the Circle of Eight that I seem to be very incensed about at the time, you would think that perhaps my feelings about it have softened a little. That is not the case, actually. I am angrier than ever about this, and I'm ready to talk to you about it. But first, a point of order at the top of the show. I'm going to leave Beth out of this because I think that she has her own opinions. So I'm not going to say that my personal views are representative of House of Bards as a collective entity or of other members involved in its production. So neither Beth nor Maxie, who is a reasonably frequent guest at this point. In the past, I have said that it is my personal view that if you own a physical copy of a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition sourcebook, that I personally viewed it as ethical for you to then pirate a PDF version of that book, because you are essentially, like, shortcutting a process that you could do yourself. And I still believe that that's true, but also my personal view has changed to just fucking pirate them. Honestly, just actively steal money from Wizards of the Coast's D&D, like, production edition specifically. And should that actually like get back to D&D 5th edition head Mike Merles somehow, I can't imagine how it would, but maybe somebody would snitch and, send it to him. Hi, Mike. If you don't like what I'm saying here, if you think it's unfair or enraging, then I will let you know that I am a queer content creator, and as such, I'm sure there are a number of domestic abusers who you could send my personal details to without my permission, since that seems to be how you solve other problems. Anyway, fuck Mike Merles.
Fuck Mike Merles.
Pirate 5th edition, I guess. So, tentatively, way, way back in the distant past, when this episode was prophesied, its name was Removing the Circle of Eight. We're not calling it that anymore. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to talk about the Circle of Eight. It's just that I really feel, having examined the subject more, the Circle of Eight is honestly a very small part of the more general problem that they represent. So instead, this episode is going to be called Separation of Church and State.
Which I am an advocate of regardless anywhere.
Right, yes.
No matter the country or...
But I think
company.
You're taking that like a bit more literally, because we are not in fact going to talk about like D&D settings where the church doesn't have any kind of executive power over the actions of the state. That's not what this is about.
I mean, it is an episode, but no, I know what you mean.
Do you all remember when 5th edition came out? It feels very recent because it's the most recent edition of the game, and a lot of people are still super into stuff like 3.5, and it's well, surely that means that 5th edition is very recent, and it's fucking not. When did D&D 5th edition come out? 2014, which is in the broad scale of tabletop role-playing games, not a long time, but it is not the relatively recent point that for contrast, 4th edition was over a decade ago. We're kind of coming up on the 3rd edition. Yeah, 3rd edition it was 2000, so it's nearly 20 years old.
Wow. Damn.
So yeah, we're basically we're a ways into D&D 5th edition's life cycle, I guess. But do you remember when it was just... I mean, some of you probably will remember when it was just the Player's Handbook out. They didn't even have the DMG. They were the Player's Handbook's going to come out, the Monster Manual is going to come out, and then the DMG will be coming at some point, but you don't need it. You can just play with, and you didn't really. The DMG has some cool stuff in it.
God, no, you didn't need the DMG. Honest, there are purchases that I regret. And one of them honestly, is the DMG, which I use. There is one page in the DMG I use.
And you don't even need to use that page.
No.
I told Beth to use that page, but it was based on me misunderstanding a rule in the DMG. But I don't know. I feel honestly, the DMG is one of the books that I'm going to take issue with here on account of it making its mouth writing checks that its successors could not cash. But really, my objection is more with the bulk of the splat books that have followed the PHB. So I guess we would be looking at what was the first one? The Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. And honestly, the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide is probably where this went wrong. But after that, we'll be talking about the I guess the Elemental Evil Player's Companion sort of skates by under the radar here. But there's Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Volo's Guide to Monsters, and Mordekainen's Tome of Foes. And each of these books, I have these books, and I like them. I like these books, but they have a major problem in them. And this is a problem that permeates pretty much every decision that Wizards of the Coast have made regarding 5th edition D&D since Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide was such a flop. Because people did not like Skag when it came out. And I think, given what happened because of that, people were unfair to the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Because here's the thing. If you're a DM like us, and you're participating in this this cult of personality, I guess, that we've constructed, whether knowingly or not, maybe you have invented the idea of shared narrative by yourself. It's a sort of natural place for tabletop RPGs to go. You don't necessarily want to use the setting content, the campaign setting content that has been created by the creators of the game. And obviously, for some games, this is more possible than others. I think there are some, for instance, Powered by the Apocalypse games that are so eminently specific in their setting that it's like, why are you playing this game, which is going to be pretty similar to other Powered by the Apocalypse games, unless you want to use the setting.
Yeah.
Because of QCon prep, I'm actually not running my normal D&D game this Monday and potentially next Monday as well. I don't know. So we're playing Monster of the Week instead. And Monster of the Week, it's its setting is the real world. That's kind of the point. But while I was looking through that, because I was like, I want to play a Powered by the Apocalypse game, and preferably, unless it's Monster of the Week, which because I listen to Taz, so I know that it's good, I don't really want to play one that I have to pay for. So I was looking up what are the free to download ones, and there's some very interesting stuff here. There's one called Den of Thieves, which I thought looked really interesting, but unfortunately, because we're a play by internet group, didn't really work for us because it involves using a deck of playing cards in a way that I thought would be logistically difficult for us. But there's one called Ghost Lines, which was really interesting, and it's about working as some sort of Fallout motherfucker in a sort of vaguely Dishonored type diesel punk setting where you are somebody who pest controls ghosts off a train.
And I was sort of that sounds cool, but I don't really... I was like, I don't want to play anything that's too, specific. I was like, I don't want to play anything that's, because I know some of the Powered of the Apocalypse games are very specific. Somewhat like Saga of the Icelanders as well is almost too specific for me, where, you have to, you're all Vikings. And I'm like, I'm not... No...
Exactly. Yeah. So it's there are some games for which this doesn't work, and I don't have a problem with that, right?
No. Yeah.
Even so here's the thing, getting into Powered by the Apocalypse again made me feel like now's the time I want to make track dogs, and maybe I'll reveal a little more about what track dogs is later on, because I really want to actually go through and properly build an RPG, and I want to use the Powered by the Apocalypse system for track dogs because I think it's going to work in the way that previous attempts at this project haven't. Track dogs is probably not really going to support making your own setting. It's going to be very vague about the definition of the setting that it has, but the system will be the setting, so on. And there are a lot of games like that. Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder are not games like that, and they shouldn't be.
No,
and I think this is really the problem that I have with a lot of the supplemental content being released for 5th edition. Because what Wizards of the Coast evidently figured out ahead of time was that they wanted people to buy the Splat books, right? And they didn't just want people to buy the Splat books, they wanted everyone to buy the Splat books, or at least everybody who conceivably could be made to buy a Splat book to buy one. Which meant they weren't going to go the line of writing specific deep dives on for instance a specific class or a specific race or a specific part of a campaign setting, with the exception of stuff the Wayfarer's Guide to Eberron, which was released as a free PDF. Again, more on that later. So they very quickly, when the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide had too much fluff and not enough crunch, which I would maintain was just because it was a bad choice for the first supplement for 5th edition, but there you go. They were like, okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to have every thing that we release is going to be half is maybe too damning. It's going to be a third fluff from our marquee setting, which is the Forgotten Realms, and stuff connected to it. So you can have stuff about Al-Qadim and Ravenloft and whatever, because they're all interconnected, stuff like that. But we're not going to do Greyhawk or Dark Sun or whatever. And in theory, again, that's fine, except I fucking hate it. It's so bad. Because what they've actually done, in a lot of cases, is make the fluff decisions that they make, not in the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, they were actually better about this then, but they've made a lot of the fluff decisions that they make have mechanical weight. And I want to talk about two major offenders here, which are Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and the Giant Soul Sorcerer Unearthed Arcana, which thankfully has not made its way into any official product yet. So, the Giant Soul Sorcerer Unearthed Arcana. Let me look this thing up so that I can explain to you what my problem is with it. Giant Soul. The giants once dwelled in a fabled realm known as Astoria, a paradise for their folk that reflected their mastery of the mortal realm. In time, Astoria fell, and the giants were scattered and broken. During that mythic era, the giants granted a few chosen individuals among the small folk a shard of their great power. These favoured people were caught in the same tragedy that sundered Astoria. Since that time, they have spread across the many worlds of the multiverse. Now and again, one of their descendants manifests the gifts imparted by the giants, granting them sorcerous magic that allows them to command the elements and gain the might of a giant. Hey, Watsy, fuck off! I don't know. You don't do stuff like this, right? Because the problem with this is a reasonably generic sorcerer origin that is it's not actually that good, which is probably the reason why it hasn't made its way into a book yet. But it has stuff like this 6th level ability, which is called Soul of Lost Astoria, and that can fuck off as well.
Yeah.
Allows you to gain a benefit where you have abilities that pertain to a specific kind of giant that you are ostensibly descended from, or in other words, other ways associated with. And what the fuck? Why are all the level up ability names named after this place Astoria that Wizards of the Coast have randomly decided needs to be part of the cosmology and or history of your setting or any setting that you run this in? And it's just so obnoxious. I don't understand why they need to do that and why they can't just have generic crunch that expresses the ideas that they want with specific campaign fluff taken out of it, but maybe presented as this is where this is our next campaign, Future Summer.
Yes.
It's going to have guns in it, and I've built a pretty extensive homebrew, which is not finished yet. It has subclasses for the rogue, fighter, and paladin, but I want to add one for the ranger at least.
Yeah.
I'm actually really excited about the paladin one, even though nobody's playing it. It's the rogue is a gunslinger, and the fighter is a musketeer. And the paladin is an inquisitor, which is they're essentially this terrifying, Van Helsing-esque, representative of the concept of fighting evil with a capital E. And then I was thinking that the ranger would probably want to be a slayer, where they would have an opportunity to use stuff like silver bullets, and they go into because it's supposed to be a sort of Regency era type point for the second campaign. So they would go into the woods and fight werewolves and things. Despite me creating it because the setting has moved into this point where firearms are a thing that you need to have and have everybody be dealing with, and there's going to be a new combat paradigm around it and whatever. The only mention of my setting, the thing that is not generic, is right at the beginning where I just specify when guns turned up. And then I immediately but in your setting, it's probably something different. And I guess that's easier for someone making homebrew. The problem with a lot of this stuff coming out of Wizards of the Coast is that it feels very hostile to the concept of homebrew in general. It really feels like they're saying, we don't want you... If you're going to make a homebrew, you have to do all of the legwork yourself. We don't want you to do anything with the additional content that we're providing. And on the one hand, that kind of makes sense. But on the other, it's no? Because... Possibly I need to be able to talk about Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes here, because the Giant Soul Sorcerer I think is a particularly egregious example of the problem that I have here, but it is Unearthed Arcana. It never actually made it into the game in a supplemental book. It was released in 2018. I don't think it will, because I think it's slightly too out there. It possibly might turn up in a supplemental for an actual adventure book, but I don't think it's going to be in a source book at any point. But let's talk about Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, which has this problem but worse. Because Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, they are sort of doing this thing, aren't they, where they're we're going to have one splat book that focuses on races and monsters, and then we're going to have one that focuses on classes and backgrounds, right? That's the switch they're doing. So they have Volo's Guide, which is It's going to have a little bit of a monster manual in it, but also some races. And then we're going to have Xanathar's Guide, which has like classes and backgrounds and feats in it. And then we're going to go back to Modern Kindness to Foes, which has more monsters and some flavour about stuff in... Like, here's the thing. Some flavour about stuff in the Forgotten Realms. Like, there's a chapter called The Blood War, right? And it's like... I don't mind that, because this entire chapter is just, like, this is how the cosmology of, like, devils and demons and whatever, and where tieflings come from, works in the Forgotten Realms. And it's like, I don't appreciate you putting that in my source book, because I don't care. It's not important to me. But it's not that's not the thing that I'm complaining about. And if they want to put it in the book so that, like, people who really want to play in the Forgotten Realms will buy the book, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, that's allowed. The thing that I don't like is that if we then skip down to demon customization tables... No, not that. Tiefling subraces. Here we go. Having tiefling subraces, whilst perhaps excessive when such content isn't available for other more standard races in the player's handbook, is really cool. What is not really cool is that they all have names pertaining to the archdevils and demon lords that exist in the cosmology of the Forgotten Realms, right? So there's Asmodeus, Baalzebul, Dispater, Fiena, Glacia, Levistus, Mammon, Mephistopheles, and Zariel. And I'm aware, of course, that a number of those are taken from, I was going to say actual Christian mythology. You know, I bet it's probably Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
Because, like...
God, can we call Dante's Inferno pop culture?
It's weird, because, like, a lot of, like, the like, pop Christian mythology is actually from Dante's Inferno and a couple of other... Like, I think Paradise Lost comes into it at some point. Basically not from the Bible, or any of the Apocrypha from the Bible, or, you know, stuff like that. Not even the Book of fucking Mormon. It's just like people wrote, like, you know, cool... Basically a bunch of nerds who had to be priests back when that was what you did if you were a nerd. That, like, really picked up on, like, oh, people have written extensive, like, law books about Christianity, I guess. And
well,
so,
that was really the biggest fandom going back then. So if you wanted to be like a popular
it's a
content
pretty
creator,
big fandom still.
Yeah.
It even has those flat fandom splits where, like, different factions in the same fandom threaten to kill each other.
Oh yeah. And there are like shipping wars all the time as well still, so it's like fine. It's a fandom.
Yeah. It's a point. Canon is called canon for a reason.
Yep.
Oof. But
Christians
yeah, like,
do not interact.
But these are cool because they, like, change up the stuff that the tieflings do. They, like, change, like, they change the like, let's pick one. Let's pick Mammon, because Mammon is, like, that is a name that appears elsewhere in Christian mythology, I'm pretty sure. It definitely appears somewhere else. Like, this is not... Wizards of the Coast do not own the name Mammon. The great miser Mammon loves coins above all else. Tieflings tied to him excel at gathering and safeguarding wealth. Your charisma score increases by 2, and your intelligence score increases by 1. These are I think, supposed to be, like... Because tieflings did not have sub-races before, I think these are supposed to be, like, replacing the ones that you would get. Because basically, what they're saying is that the tiefling in the player's handbook is the tiefling of Asmodeus, right? And it's like, that's the traits that you get. But the tiefling of Mammon is like, charisma score increases by 2 and your intelligence score increases by 1. Legacy of Minaros. You know the mage hand cantrip. When you reach 3rd level, you can cast the Tensor's Floating Disc spell once with this trait and regain the ability to do so when you finish a short or long rest. When you reach 5th level, you can cast the Arcane Lock spell once with this trait, requiring no material component, and regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. That was... The PDF is sort of, like, fucked up. Charisma is your spellcasting ability for these spells. That's cool. That's really... Like, I love that there are, like... how many of these are there? There should be 9. 8, 9. Yeah, there are 9, right? But the names of the sub-races pertain to, like, the infernal being connected to the tiefling subfamily, and more importantly, because obviously you could just ignore that as just a name, is the name of your infernal legacy pertains to a person or place associated with that archfiend. And I'm like, I don't want that crap. baked into like the things that a player is going to see when they look at the page. It's like, so Dawnslumber's cosmology has 9 archfiends. It's true. It actually has 10, but you can't be a tiefling of Ataramatsu, because I mean you actually probably can, and I should figure out like what those look like. So this is the thing that really bothers me, and I had to do some research. I have actual notes for this episode, if you can believe it, because I looked up how Paizo handled this, because I remember when I was reading the comments on a what was it called? It was Pathfinder Horror Adventures, which is a supplement that lets you put supernatural horror elements into Pathfinder in such a way as they weren't already. I remember one of the designers, in a comment that I believe must now have been deleted, saying that it was Pathfinder's policy that content for Golarion, which is their marquee setting, would be released only... Well, basically, it would be released everywhere, but it wasn't allowed to be released in the Pathfinder RPG line, which was like, these are the core rules, and this is where a lot of the like expansions to the game that we expect most people to use will come in. That was their policy up until 2017. And now, apparently, Golarion content has been sneaking into the Pathfinder RPG line, and a lot of people are quite unhappy at the amount of campaign fluff that may be present in the sourcebooks for Pathfinder 2. But that's a whole conversation that I did not have time to read, that is also about a game that I do not play. Because here's the thing, Pathfinder sucks ass. But in terms of... It's weird, because I think Paizo is actually the better company, like, working with the content, like, with the product that they have. I think the art that they use is generally, like, I know Wizards of the Coast is trying to be more inclusive. I think Pathfinder are actually, like, achieving it in non-cringy ways that they can actually back up more.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that, yeah. Like, I think Pathfinder is... I understand why it's that way, because it wants to be, like, very, very open source almost. I understand why Pathfinder is so complicated, because that's the issue I have with Pathfinder.
To an extent, Pathfinder has to be like that, because... Yeah. Because of the OGL, right? They're still working off... I think, like, possibly the reason that they want to create Pathfinder 2 is that they want to actually, like, try and reduce their dependency on the 3rd edition OGL and, like, make something that is actually theirs. But no, like, I like a lot of their artwork. You do have to have a taste for Wayne Reynolds, because they basically use just him. Some of the magic art that he's done I like. He makes things very pointy and sharp and scratchy, and some people like that and some people really don't. I like their goblins as well, because they're interesting and very goblin-y without having really big noses, which is like a whole thing to itself. Like, that one's really difficult to explain to players, though, because you're like, I have to go into, like, a pretty exhaustive history of the anti-Semitic imagery used in Europe and the connection to mythical creatures. And we're not going to do that, because we have 4 hours to play D&D, and you are a new player who doesn't know me from Adam, so it probably wouldn't be in good faith. That kind of thing. So, I think Paizo are the better company with the worst product. I guess that's a hot take here. Right?
Yeah.
Like Pathfinder is absolute garbage, because it's like, hey, what if you wanted to have all of the things that were bad about 3rd edition, and also, like, other things have been fixed, but not any of the things you care about? It's basically, like, the Bitcoin of 3rd edition D&D. It's like, we're going to expend a huge amount of effort and resources to fix something that wasn't actually wrong with this otherwise very problematic product.
Yeah.
But I like a lot of what Paizo... I'm couching here by saying I like a lot of what Paizo do as a company, because companies in general are bad. And also, like, I imagine that somebody's going to fucking come for me in the comments because of, like, something awful that Paizo have done as a company. They have existed for quite a while, so it is eminently possible that they have, like, you know, done that for 3 fucking ways of determining whether something can hit you, by the way. Like, why was that not the first thing to cut? But no, like I like a lot of what Paizo do, especially around Pathfinder. I think their policies on inclusive gaming are a lot better than Wizards of the Coast. I think their policies on gaming for new media is a lot better than Wizards of the Coast. They got on the bandwagon of like selling high quality PDFs with a sort of DRM system that made them happy, while not like people could still share around their PDFs, but basically if you resold it, the PDF would have the person's name on it that it was sold to. That's the thing. So that was great. Like Paizo, I think are light years ahead in the game on that. It's just that their product sucks. But I thought, yeah, even in this, they were ahead of the game, because like I remember, I don't remember, it was Mark something, this designer, saying it has always been our policy, because at the time it was, and it had, to separate Golarion specific crunch content from the regular rulebook. I think he was responding, I think, to somebody who was asking, why is there not more Golarion stuff in Pathfinder Horror Adventures? And it's like, well, because Pathfinder Horror Adventures is a core supplement, so we're not doing that. And I think for a while that's what Wizards did, and then they decided not to do it because they wanted more people to buy books. And it's like, hey, WotC, you would not have to do that if you actually embraced the internet age and new media in general regarding like how your books are distributed. And they've done D&D Beyond, and it's fine, but D&D Beyond is basically like a distribution system for piddling little bits of content that come from other sources, and also like digital versions of the source book that they still control and can take away from you at any point. And it's like, there's other stuff as well, but basically as long as you're still printing books as your primary like way of distributing this content, you are going to run into this issue that books, especially really nice, like glossy hardcover books, like the ones that you print, are expensive to make. And as such, you have to be prepared to see a degree of return on your investment. And it's, I don't know, I feel like this is the decision that they've made, is that like, we're just going to print books for the Forgotten Realms, and they're going to have crunch in them, and anybody who wants to like unpick the crunch to use in their own worlds is going to have to like do that themselves. And fuck that. Like, I think also there's a certain amount of, how Nintendo constantly lowballs the amount of stuff that they need to make because of the GameCube?
Yes.
Like people complain, it's like, oh, you didn't order for enough like Switch units to be made, or you didn't order for enough like 3DSs to be made, or enough like copies of this first party title. And it's because of the GameCube. It's because the GameCube was a massive commercial failure that nearly bankrupted the company.
Oh boy, yeah.
And they are still salty about that, and still like gun shy about like ordering, even like for something that has proven itself to be a success, like a new version of it. They're still like, oh, let's just make a few. And then they run into problems, obviously, where like they can't just buy more production time. They have to wait their turn in factories and whatever. So I think that's sort of how WotC have like handled the idea of content that players and GMs can use to create their own content, spread their own ideas because of the 3rd edition OGL. I think they are still reeling because of how badly the 3rd edition OGL screwed them over. And it's like, I know that for you personally, that was a really bad time. And your primary competitor exists because of that mistake that you made, which is kind of funny. But also, this is the lifeblood of the game, right? We've talked about this before on the podcast, about how, like, to a certain extent, a game as generic and as widespread as Dungeons & Dragons, because for God's sake, guys, please play another game. I love D&D. I play D&D a lot. I sometimes get upset when I see, like, indie RPG fans being, the things that are, like, anti-Harry Potter action, read another book.
Yeah!
They're like that.
And you're
just
like,
that,
no,
yeah.
no, fuck off. Yeah, J.K. Rowling's a piece of shit, and it's not the perfect book series, but it's important to me, and you leave Draco Malfoy alone, you bastards,
And then you find out that it's not about the people who just enjoy reading Harry Potter, because Harry Potter was honestly fine, especially for the age that we were. The problem is with, like, the people who are so entrenched in, like, Harry Potter as a way of framing conflict in their lives.
Yeah.
That if you don't explain like a political situation to them in a way that involves Death Eaters, they don't understand it. And it's the same thing with D&D. It's like, when people say anti-D&D action, play another game, they don't mean me. They mean the people who are like, here's a thing that I actually want to play instead of D&D, but because D&D 5th edition is all I know, I'm going to like heavily warp the system in order to support playing that. Like, for instance, why was the Rick and Morty supplement a D&D thing?
Yeah.
There's
Why?
no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I haven't played it. I haven't read it. I don't know if it's like fantasy, like high fantasy themed. It might be, but Rick and Morty. Somebody suggested that. I think it was my friend Niall suggested that Lasers and Feelings is probably a game that you'd want to make Rick and Morty work in, or alternatively, make a Powered by the Apocalypse game, which can very easily fit something like Rick and Morty in. And you know, it's probably better because, like, honestly, that show is the reason why the Rick and Morty fans think they are smart meme is funny, is because the show is about a man who diegetically is smart. It is not actually an intelligent show, and it is not trying to be. It is a, like, pulpish cartoon about a mad scientist.
God,
like,
I've just realised one of the reasons why I like Rick and Morty is because I like Futurama, and I'm always trying to recapture Futurama seasons 1 to 4 in my head. Yeah,
right. It's vaguely like it has a degree of like adult Futurama energy, which is not to say that Futurama itself wasn't adult, but Rick and Morty goes a little like more gross out, I guess.
Yeah.
Why was that 5th edition? Why was that 5th edition
Yeah.
D&D? There is no reason whatsoever for that to be 5th edition D&D. It should have used a more, like, either invented its own system or used, like, a tried and true engine like Powered by the Apocalypse that would have worked. Because, like, I think either Powered by the Apocalypse probably would have been better because I think the other one I would suggest would be the Legend of the Five Rings / 7th Sea system. But I think that one sort of acknowledges that it's all a show a little bit more than Rick and Morty, like, wants to do. So check Powered by the Apocalypse, which is just about cool people doing cool shit, which is what Rick and Morty is about. I mean, they're not likable people, but they're nevertheless cool people because they have like a load of interesting shit, and they have like a character interplay that's like fun and it works. And it's like, why was this D&D? It doesn't need to be D&D. It shouldn't have been D&D.
Yeah.
But there's this whole like 5th edition has been too successful, and now D&D is like the only game that people think exists. It's kind of why, even though apparently it hasn't worked out quite as well for them in terms of viewership, I'm glad that the Adventure Zone moved away from 5th edition.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, like, I think
Critical Role is never going to move away from D&D. Right?
It kind of can't, can it?
No, it can't. Whereas Taz is like a little bit smaller, but it still has a reasonably big following, and it's not tied down to like playing D&D, so they can showcase these like other games which are also fun. I'm super stoked to play Monster of the Week. I have enjoyed in the past playing things like Traveller, which is a very good game. It doesn't necessarily one-shot well. In the future, I want to play Call of Cthulhu with some of you guys, and when I've finished Track Dogs, I want to probably play it on a game of Bards.
Oh yeah, I should point out Critical Role does do one-shots that are set, because if we don't, people are going to say... It does do one-shots, and it has done one-shots set outside that. Like, it's just put up a Call of Cthulhu, at the time of speaking, put up a Call of Cthulhu one-shot, which I'm watching through at the minute and enjoying. It's done Honey Heist and stuff like that. You know, which, you know, it's fine, but, like, they do that as one-shots because, like...
Yeah.
They're
because
one-shots.
They know that they can't, like, maintain their audience through, like... Basically, it's not what people signed up for.
No, yeah. And I understand that to some degree.
If, by the way, you are interested in a tabletop role-playing series by a group of people who did want to ensure that was what people signed up for, I encourage you to check out Loading Ready Run's Dice Friends. And by out Loading Ready Run's Dice Friends, I mean don't watch the first campaign because it's D&D 5th edition, and it's fine. It's not super great. I would suggest starting with Music of the Spheres, which is a Call of Cthulhu campaign DM'd by Cameron Lauder. It's really good, and it's actually quite scary. Beyond that, there is also, if you do want 5th edition, Kathleen got incredible success with By Law and Order, which is about like middle management bureaucrats on Ravnica trying to get all 10 guilds to agree on a like minimum amount of bad product that should be in sausages. And the problems that they encounter while trying to do that. It's basically about, like, the little people who aren't superhero planeswalkers in Magic the Gathering just trying to do their jobs. And even if you don't know anything about Ravnica, she does, like, quite a lot of upfront, like, box text that you would need to know or kind of need to know. And the players are very funny, the characters are very good. I really do recommend it. It's very, very nice. But start with Music of the Spheres, because it's spooky and you'll love it. So I guess that's I should be getting money from them, probably. I don't know that Graham will agree to send me a check.
I know. I like it's like, you know, not to slate on another actual play podcast that I actually think is very good, because I think the music's really good. I think it's well put together and well edited. I think the homebrew retrofit of, like, what they did to 5th edition was really good, but Roaring Trainers, which is like a Pokemon podcast set in the 1920s, uses, like, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons as its baseline, and I don't necessarily think that's the best for, like, a Pokemon RPG.
I agree, but in fairness to them, I have played a 5th edition conversion for Pokemon that, given that it is apparently not the one used by the Roaring Trainers, cannot be better. Like, I had a lot of fun playing this system. I don't, you know, it's weird, because it's like, if I had a lot of fun playing this system that was bad, the system that the Roaring Trainers uses, which is presumably better, is probably, like, also fun. I imagine, I've heard from a number of people that it's fun to listen to, so I imagine it's fun to play. But it was like, I needed a fucking... If I go into my characters, because this is where I keep all my character sheets from past games, these are all form-fillable PDFs, except the one that's Oath, which is the character that I was playing for this game, which is an XLSX. And if you don't know, that is the proprietary format for Microsoft Excel, because you needed a, like, specialized sheet with Excel macros to actually play this game. And it's just, I think the major thing that weirds me out about using 5th edition for that is that, like, your character, the trainer, is not relevant and should not have stats.
No,
There's no reason whatsoever that you should have any of that shit, because, like, the Pokemon are the... Like, even in this homebrew, it made it explicitly clear that trainers cannot fight or interact with the world mechanically in really any meaningful way. Because that's Pokemon, right? It's your Pokemon who do all the shit. So, it's... I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, like, to an extent of, like, doing stuff, like, that would be difficult for a human being to do in real life, yeah, but, like... Like, the human is the face of that team, so, like, stuff like charisma is still a check you could do. Intelligence and wisdom,
yeah,
sure.
I think actually, yeah, that was the sort of thing that was allowed. And it's like, well, this probably works, but why? Why are you using... Because a lot of the time what it feels like is this is a heartfelt, yearning desire to have a generic system that is reasonably easy to use, that can have the thing that I want to play planted on top of it. And it's like, those exist. And 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is not one of them, and never was trying to be.
No, I don't think so.
It's better than if you used, like, 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons, or fucking Pathfinder, God forbid. But, like, use Powered by the Apocalypse, for instance. Or if you want something more crunchy, use GURPS, which was literally built for this. It's just weird that it's... and it's like, if those people are happy, like, playing with the system that they have, then on an individual level, that's fine. But on, like, a meta level of, it really feels like a lot of these people don't understand that other games exist and are good and can fix the problem they're having. Like, it's very worrying, because it's sort of like, imagine if all, like, internet animators made cartoons that were, like, that used the Disney style, because Disney had become such a, like, a monolithic entity in animation that they genuinely did not understand that you can make animations that don't look like that.
Oh, I am going to have to be like, there is a real world example of this that you're thinking of. All adult cartoons look like Family Guy.
They do, actually. That's
I
think part of that is a cost thing. But yeah, they really do.
Yeah.
This is the problem, is that, like, 5th edition is not bad. I like the system, I like the game, I like playing it in, like, a big long campaign.
I like... I don't like their rules for chasing, but I like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons very much.
I don't like their rules for helping people do things. I think they are too restricted, because it's either a, like, group check, which feels very formalized, or it's the assist action, which can only involve 2 people. There's basically no real, like, setup for if 2 people want to help you do a thing that they should reasonably be able to help you do.
Yeah.
And so I've just been using, like, group checks more often now, because I feel like that's the best, without writing something myself, that's the best solution. But I really wish that there were, like, something for that. And that's the kind of thing that you potentially could bring out in a, like, splat book. But yeah, it's like, it is okay, I guess, if you want to warp D&D 5e to, like, reflect your own weird
twisted desires.
I wish you wouldn't, but it is okay.
Like,
if
you
can,
do. But please don't. You know, like, you can.
Basically, as long as you know that it's like watching somebody, like, use a rock to, like, bash in a nail, and you're like, that's gonna work for you eventually, but you know hammers exist, right? Like, you know that this is a solved problem. If you just want to, like, have a mess around and, like, build, like, a reasonably rules light RPG, I really encourage you to check out Simple World, which is basically Apocalypse World with all the, like, serial numbers filed off so that people can use it to build Powered by the Apocalypse games. It's free. I don't remember where you get it, but if you Google Simple World, you find it, and that's what I'm using as, like, the template to build track dogs, along with, like, what I like out of Monster of the Week. Track dogs will be nothing like Monster of the Week, so it's mainly more as, like, what kind of gameplay stuff do I want to encourage, which Simple World itself says is something you should pay attention to. But I realise we haven't really talked about the Circle of 8 yet. Do we want to talk about the Circle of 8?
Yes, let's talk about the Circle of 8, or the Circle of 13 or 14 or 19 or...
Well, yeah, here's the thing, because I looked this up. I looked this up on Wikipedia, because I was like, I know that the Circle of 8 originally started as 8 player characters that Gary Gygax had, because back then you used more, you had more player characters at a time. You had, like, a little army of them, and sometimes you'd use them all at once, and sometimes you'd be like, I think I'm going to use Basbo Blabbins today, and I'm gonna, like, come out and it was all really kind of West Marches, come to think of it. So basically, also because Gary Gygax had this idea that was, like, codified in original D&D and AD&D quite a bit, that that basically characters should grow out of adventuring. That eventually, when you became very high level, you stopped adventuring and you got a stronghold and you hired people to do adventuring for you and that kind of thing. So Mordenkainen, I think, was the character who did that for all his other PCs, and they built this enormous citadel and whatever that they went out to fight evil from, and it was like their superhero base. This is part of the reason why I'm bringing up this subject at all. I'm wondering if I can get Beth at all interested. So when Wizards of the Coast bought TSR and made Gary Gygax leave, they owned the names of his characters because he codified them in the product that WotC had bought. So they decided that they were going to make, like, a different mythology for the Circle of 8. And I'm not going to... You can go and read fucking Wikipedia, which doesn't have any conflicts at all on this subject, so I presume is correct, about the Citadel of 8 and the Circle of 8 that followed it, to find out exactly where everybody fits in this. But here are the 13 people who have, over the course of time, been part of the Circle or Citadel of 8, or a clone of them has been part of the Circle or Citadel of 8, because there was a point where all of them except Mordenkainen got fucking killed, and then he cloned them all back. It was weird.
If all your friends are dead, it's fine, just clone your own.
Apparently, like, an entire, like, genocide happened because he was busy doing that and not stopping the genocide from happening.
Mordenkainen,
So fuck Mordenkainen, basically. But no, it's Mordenkainen, Bigby, Bucknard, Drawmidge, Leomund, Nistel, Otto, Rary, Otterluke, Jalazi Salivarian...
Wait. Otto and Otterluke aren't the same person.
Otto and Otterluke are not the same person.
What the fuck?
Jalazi Salivarian was the first woman in the Circle of 8.
Oh, cool.
She was not even part of the original 8, because fuck Gary Gygax, I guess. Warnes or Varnes Starcoat, Alhamazad the Wise, and an elf called Theodane Erieson. So there you go. There's 13 of them. Not at the same time. I think they've only had the maximum of 9 at the same time, but there's 13 of them in total. And first of all, Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes can fuck off with its implication that, like, basically all settings have to involve Mordenkainen because he can travel to all planes and to all universes, and it's like, no.
Not mine, he can't. Mordenkainen can go back to the plane he came from.
Yeah, fuck off.
Mordenkainen, more like modern.
It's like, we don't need this. But basically, like the reason why I initially wanted to call this episode "Removing the Circle of Eight" is some of the Circle of Eight you may have recognised the names of, even if you're not like up to speed on your Greyhawk lore. You would recognise Mordenkainen because he has an entire fucking source book named after him. But you'd recognise Bigby, Drawmidge, Leomund, Nistel, Otto, Otterluke, possibly Rary. I haven't actually seen. You would recognise their names. And you would think, well, why? Why do I recognise their names?
Who is Otto, and why is his dance irresistible?
In fact, actually, do you know what? I might have missed one. Tensor, yes, sorry, 14. Tensor was one of them.
Well, what about Tasha? Who's Tasha then?
I don't know. I don't know who Tasha is. But
because Tasha's hideous laughter, and that's the thing.
Well, yeah, this is the thing that we're going to get to, is that, like, these all have names attached to spells in the spellbook.
Yeah.
I presume Tasha was somebody else, but this is the thing. Some of these spells are named after people.
Yeah.
On the face of it, that's cool and fine, because, like, sometimes you would imagine that a wizard who invented a spell would name it after themselves, because wizards... Look, what's the point in being, like, a giant nerd who lives in a tower if you don't occasionally get to name the shit you invented after yourself? It's like, if you're not doing it to massage your own ego, why are you doing it?
Yeah, Snape really missed out.
For a love of academia? Yeah. You nerd. Get out.
Yeah, Severus Snape really missed out when he didn't name all of his, like, spells that he invented in Half-Blood Prince after him. Like, he should have been like, and this is, what's one of the ones that he made up? Fuck, hang on.
Was it Septa Sempra? Wasn't that
Septa Sempra, yeah. He should have named it Snape Decembra.
Yeah,
he should have named it Snape Decembra. Because, like, Harry wasn't going to figure it out. Harry was a fucking dumbass. He should have just been like, yeah, so this spell is called Snape Decembra.
You just keep writing, it's named after Severus Snape, who is me. That is who I am.
That is who I am. And Harry's like, God, who could the Half-Blood Prince be? I just don't know. And fucking Snape's like, oh my God, he's so dumb. He's such an idiot.
But, on the face of it, this seems cool, right? It's not cool. It's actually a massive pain in the ass.
It is kind of annoying, yeah.
Because all of those names are product identity. What that means is, if you use them, even to refer to the spell in your homebrew, Wizards of the Coast will get extremely angry and litigious, and they will make you go to copyright jail. Or, I mean, probably just, like, pull your stuff off the DM's Guild or wherever.
Which is really annoying, because they made it that way.
No, sorry. They will not take it off the DM's Guild, because you are allowed to use it on the DM's Guild.
Alright, okay. But they made it that way. Why'd they make it that way if they're just... You fucking new people...
Well, here's the thing. They didn't.
I am getting angry about this now. You've convinced me. This is fucking
Beth,
shit.
This is terrible. I've got Beth angry about the thing that I'm actually just about to explain why she should be less angry about.
I didn't even care before. Now I'm mad.
So here's the thing. This is a problem. This specifically is a problem that wizards themselves have actually attempted to address.
Okay.
Because some of those spells turn up in the SRD. For 5th edition.
Uh-huh.
And obviously it's like, well, we can't put product identity in the SRD because that's
mean.
Bad.
Yeah.
That's bad and mean, and also it releases that because we assure them that everything in the SRD is OGL content. We're basically giving up that product identity. So those spells, let me see if I can find one. Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound, Mordenkainen's Magnificent Mansion, Mordenkainen's Private Sanctum. So if we say Faithful Hound, which is a 4th level conjuration spell, Faithful Hound, it's just called Faithful Hound. Similarly, if we try Magnificent Mansion, which is a 7th level conjuration spell, we find Magnificent Mansion.
Good,
and
yes.
Private Sanctum, which is a 4th level abjuration spell, we find Private Sanctum.
Good.
So if somebody was coming to you and Leomund's Tiny Hut is also just Tiny Hut. I believe Abanazar's Scorcher, which is one of them, and I'm surprised Abanazar isn't. Is he in there? He's not. Abanazar apparently not one of the Circle of Eight. He's somebody else. Abanazar Scorcher... Oh, hold on. No, sorry, never mind that one, because that was from Xanathar, so it wouldn't be in the SRD.
What do they do about Bigby's hand? Is it just called Big Boy's hand?
Actually, no, hold on. Bigby's hand. Because it's something else. This is the thing I was trying to get to, because obviously with the Mordenkainen's ones, you just cut off Mordenkainen's name. It's fine.
Yeah, like when it's just, but Bigby's hand, it's just, you can't just call a spell hand.
5th level evocation. They called it... Arcane Hand.
Oh, yeah, alright, yeah, cool, yeah.
And it's like, so if a new player came to you and their only source was the SRD for some reason, then you would not have a problem explaining to them that because these characters don't exist in your setting, the spells have different names. But if, they're not going to do that, because even if you don't got money, the OGL SRD is not the document that you would be coming and using as a basis for playing the game. You would use the basic rules PDF or something. It's that's being oh, okay, I don't have money to play this video game, so instead of playing the demo version, I'm gonna use the old open source version and compile it myself. As I'm not gonna do anything with it. That's just how I play this game. It's no, why would you do that? Or I guess, better than even, I'm not going to play, the free version. It's well, no. That's not going to happen, and you can't rely on that happening, which is my point. This is annoying. Because, obviously, that kind of player, you could tell, they would be okay with it being called Arcane Hand, assuming you didn't want to call it something else. But a player who comes to you with the PHB, and you're well, it's not called Bigby's Hand because Bigby doesn't exist. They're okay, that's not important, and it will be confusing for me because that's what it's called in the book, so call it Bigby's Hand. And so normally, when you would have a conflict between what the player wants to believe about your setting because it's easier and helps them reference the book or their own knowledge better, with a historical figure, for instance, if your player wants to use a Molotov cocktail, you could go the Bloodborne route and just have it be called a Molotov cocktail and have no explanation whatsoever for why it's called that. Or you could call it something else. You could, I think you call it Alchemist's Fire or something of that sort. Or, what I do as a quick fix is just create an XP of Molotov. Well, not an XP of Molotov. I have created an XP of René Descartes, just so that I can reference Cartesian space and not have it be weird. But in Dawn Somber, Vitamir Molotov was a Dragonborn revolutionary widely credited, apocryphally, as per the current consensus, with the invention of the incendiary device known as the Molotov cocktail. A rare chimera of brass and green dragon heritage, Molotov was a key figure in a number of Dragonborn-led organizations between 388 and 404 MY that sought to violently oppose the factions of the Elven Empire and its government, particularly, though not exclusively, when those actions pertain to infringement on Dragonborn territory or attacks, violent or not, on the Dragonborn people. So I made him a revolutionary, whereas the actual Molotov was he didn't invent the Molotov cocktail. He was the Russian president at the time, I think. Basically, the Molotov cocktails were being used against him, and it was a joke about how he was pretending to the international community that what was being dropped on Finland were bread baskets, food drops, basically, to the people, when actually they were bombs or tanks. I guess I don't remember. The point is, they were doing a military incursion into Finland, and the Finns were oh, we're going to make a joke about oh, well, if you're bringing food to us that is obviously tanks, we are going to throw the drink, which is this alcohol that explodes. So you can do that. If the obstructive problem is a name that Wizards of the Coast have made, you can't really do that. You kind of can if you distributed your own your own content to your players, but you can't if you make a character like that, you can never put them in anything public that you publish about your setting because they infringe on product identity. So I just hate this because it's like WotC just rubbing their grubby little hands all over absolutely everything in the game, being well, principally you are allowed to create your own content, but we're going to make it really difficult for you. And I bet fucking bootlickers actually will come into the comments and be well, they're a business, they're allowed to do that. And I'm well, they are, but it doesn't stop them from being assholes because literally the function of their product relies on them en masse not doing that.
And I mean, of course, they can have their own setting and stuff like that. And of course, you can assume that maybe people are going to play in that setting. I understand that and stuff like that, and it's fine if you want to like be like, well, the majority of DMs probably aren't gonna have their entire setting be made from scratch, which I guess is a reasonable assumption, but also like, is it though? Is it?
It's just, it's not a difficult leap from players want to play like their own way. Like we talked about this in the episode about the OGL, that like the OGL is a necessity because creating content out of the game is what the game is fundamentally asking you to do.
It is,
and restricting that to like, oh, you can only play like the stuff that we say that you can play is silly. Because that's not how the game works. So it really annoys me that they have done this much to like properly wipe the Forgotten Realms across everything that might be mechanically interesting to use. It really bothers me. And it bothers me also that Pathfinder is apparently like stopping their otherwise very good policy of not doing that. But like I really think that like this is just I don't know that I'd be so pompous as to call it anti-consumer, but it's definitely like hostile to creative DMs.
Yeah.
Who want to like do something different with the content that they're given. It's like, well, you have to make your own version of this content, and you're not allowed to share it with anyone once you've expended the effort on making it, because that would be like not cool and a contravention of our like content rights. And it's like, well, why did you do that then?
I know, like somewhat like this is because like it's stuff like their original stuff as well, stuff like Beholders, which are so quintessentially Dungeons and Dragons, something that is so iconic. It's iconic Dungeons and Dragons. People love Beholders. I love Beholders, and I remember when I started 2F, and I was like, no, I can't use those monsters because they belong in Forgotten Realms. They're a D&D thing. Now I'm a bit more open to the idea because I'm just like, who gives a fuck? But like,
well, I mean, if I want to publish stuff about Dawnsomber, I have to be conscious of the fact that basically none of the like pretty extensive content pertaining to Mind Flayers can make it in.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't like Mind Flayers to start with, and then I realized that in Dawnsomber they're basically Daleks. Like, they're evil for the sake of evil. They were artificially created by somebody who was trying to create an evil for the sake of evil race because he was a dick and he thought that, like, basically smart people deserved to be their own species that got to, like, eat everybody. And then they just hang around, and every time they turn up again, they have a different structure of government and a different, like, ridiculous plan to, like, take over the entirety of the multiverse, and, like, maybe a different way of regenerating themselves. Because they've like run into a problem and they mess around with time, and it's like I want to do all of the massive ham stuff that I really enjoyed about like classic new Doctor Who. I'm going to do it with the Mind Flayers because they get the opportunity to be cartoonishly evil. I had a party of players witness their creation, like actually be there when the Mind Flayer race began, so they know how and why the Mind Flayers are the way they are, and I can like convey that to other players. And it's like, I can't use any of that in anything that I publish about the setting because Mind Flayers are product identity and they've just got to be conspicuously absent the more because I'm sort of digging my own grave here. I'm like making them more and more prevalent in the setting, and it's like none of this can get in. If I put the GIF in, like I can't. Like obviously the GIF are going to be in the setting, but I can't like publish anything to do with the GIF, even if I just refer to them by name, because why would they be there? Who would they say created them? You know, like the GIF's entire thing is like the entire thing about the GIF that you'll find out in Future Somber is that they don't like it when other people fight the Mind Flayers because they like regard it as like kill stealing. They think that they are uniquely the people who have the divine right to destroy the Mind Flayers for the crimes against their people specifically. And anytime any other group of people, some of whom they might sympathize with if they're like Dragonborn or whatever, get close to killing the Mind Flayers, they drop in and they're like, you have to let a representative of the GIF come with you because otherwise we're going to stop you because this is our turf. And it's like, so if I put the GIF in but I can only use OGL content, well, first of all, using the GIF would be kind of awkward. Potentially I could maybe get around some of that stuff, but why would they be there? What would they explain as their reason for being there? I guess like that really bothers me. And I think obviously Wizards of the Coast want to produce content for the Forgotten Realms, and they want to produce sourcebook content efficiently. and I don't begrudge them either of those things, even if I think that the way that they're producing sourcebook content is sort of them, like, making the rope to hang themselves with. Like, guys, the reason why your sourcebook content isn't being profitable is because you're selling it in a really old-fashioned and unproductive way. But sure, I know that they have to do that thing. What I really would appreciate is if the source books were just less hostile to the idea that maybe people want to take what you've built, or bought in the case of all the stuff that was core to the game when they took it over from TSR, and do something else with it. I can still make custom content, but I have to get players excited about that, even though it will mean basically telling them that, like, everything that isn't a number in your source book is wrong. And it's just exhausting at times. And it's like, oh, sometimes maybe it would just be easier to do this. I'm like, no, because this stuff shouldn't have been in the source book to begin with. Or at least it shouldn't have been there. It shouldn't have been, like, the names of abilities and spells and whatever. I don't know. So I guess that's my rant that Beth occasionally contributed to about the separation of church and state in 5th edition and how there isn't any.
Like, I agree with you. I understand why it is ultimately very annoying. It is certainly irritating. But I would also say that while I understand the frustration, it's not something I really think about that often. I think it's, like, as a creative DM, I think we're both willing to do the work, and it's more, I just feel bad for DMs who just wanted to not do that.
To be clear, like, I am perfectly willing and prepared to do the work. The obstruction that I have is that as soon as I have done that work, I then have an uphill battle trying to engender enthusiasm in people who might be new players, especially if they're new players of the game. Like, I want to be able to play my setting with new players in the game, and they can't use any of the resources that are available to them in the way that it comes most naturally to them.
Yeah.
Because that stuff is all, like, Forgotten Realms. And it's...
Yeah. I mean, even if stuff like, if someone comes to me like, hey, I want to play a drow and I want him to be like, like an exceptional drow, and he's like one of the good of his race, and you've got to be like, ooh, that's actually not how drow work in my setting.
I mean, to be honest, I'd be like, existing is not how drow work in my setting.
Yeah, but even I'd be like, oh, you see, no, being a drow is just like being kind of a more like a goth version of what elves are like in my setting, and more Russian. Like, it's like they're a good drow, it's good, and but like it's fine, and I understand that, like, that's something that, like, either you have to be running a setting where, oh well, generally, yeah, drow are like this, but maybe there's a whole place where drow aren't like that. A lot like the current Critical Role campaign, there's a whole country where drow are just normal people.
Yeah.
Neither good nor bad.
I don't believe that either of our methods are different, or indeed that we have particularly different methods. I think it's just that, like, I would do the thing that you did to drow, except not to drow, because drow have burned through their good faith with me. As soon as, like, I got the book and I realised that the token effort that Wizards of the Coast had made towards the goal of de-racismifying the ephemeral concept of the drow was pathetic, actually, and just terrible.
I agree.
Well, fuck it then. They're not getting in. There aren't any drow.
Yeah.
There's no Underdark. I'm not putting the drow in.
Yeah, it was different for me, where I was like, I ostensibly like this kind of aesthetic anyway. I like these spider goths. I'm willing to do the work. I like their aesthetic. I like dark elves in general anyway. It's just, they live in a part of the world where it's generally always nighttime. They live in a colder climate up north, like Scandinavians do, so most of the day it's the night for them. Daytime isn't something they deal with, so it makes sense why they're the way they are and stuff like that. But the Underdark isn't something I'm particularly interested in. Like,
no, the setting has no Underdark mine, and I think that's why it took me such a long time to get to the Mind Flayers, because that's generally where they live, and I just wasn't interested in that.
Yeah,
I actually really like the Mind Flayers that I've built, and like how they're just they're cartoonish, like, screaming science villains.
Yeah, it's going to be really difficult when I go and do my Mind Flayers to not do that with them. I mean, my concept for the Mind Flayers is different because they live on a, like, Planet Hulk-esque kind of, like, Mojo world. Like, we steal heroic people from other realms and we put them to, in, like, a reality-esque show combat thing. But I'm like, well, that's just that one episode of Doctor Who, so they are the Daleks, effectively, so
there's stuff I wanna get to, and I think it's very late, so we should probably wrap it up here.
So, what have we learned?
Well, what we've learned is fuck Wizards of the Coast, but like, I mean, we said that at the top of the show.
Yeah.
So,
be gay, do crimes. Fuck Mike
be gay,
Mills.
do crimes. If you wanna make like your own tabletop RPG like hack, you can use 5th edition D&D if you absolutely must. Like, that's not a problem. You're not going to hell. But other games exist, and please check them out to see if they would work better. And also, if you're a player coming into a game with a long-suffering DM who has their own custom setting, be prepared to try and like do some of the legwork with them.
Yeah,
because like they don't want you to, but the way that Wizards of the Coast have set up the relationship between them, you, and the DM, you have to, basically. Yeah. That's the only way that it'll... Like, be prepared for them to tell you that stuff has different names, that stuff works slightly differently, that just come along on the ride in their world, and then, like, see if there's a part of it that you like, that you want to explore more. See how flexible they are on the subject. I'm getting more flexible about my setting, but flexible to what my players want. I don't care about Wizards of the Coast or Paizo or what they want my setting to be like.
I'm thinking of that image now where it's like, isn't there someone you forgot to ask between consent and the DM? And it's just fucking Gary Gygax in the background.
God, no, though. It wouldn't even be Gary Gygax.
It wouldn't be Gary. It would just be, I guess, just a random guy, and then it's the logo of, like, Wizards of the Coast on the guy's head.
Yeah, it would.
Playing in a Dungeons and Dragons setting, isn't there someone you forgot to ask?
Yeah. Oh, God, no. Anyway, so, I've been Alex.
I've been Beth.
Before we wrap up, a lot of stuff has happened since we didn't make episodes for like a year. Patreon did shit the bed, I guess.
The great fucking of Patreon.
Yes, the great fucking of Patreon happened, and as such, everybody did like a mad scramble to grab a Patreon. So House of Bards has a Patreon now. I don't know if any of you want to like give us money in return for doing this terrible, terrible show. But if you do, I think it ought to be set up that it's not like a monthly payment, it's like whenever we produce content. So I think you can set like a monthly limit on that, either that or we set it. Look, I don't know how Patreon works from the not paying people side, so I'm going to need to sort some of that stuff out. It is attached to a PayPal account that, in a very complicated way, is set up such that both Beth and I can access it. So anything that comes to us through the Patreon, we are probably going to split between us.
Yep.
It was like going to be weighted towards Beth for a while, but now Beth has a new computer, so she doesn't have funding for that. Yeah. You will be able to give me money at some point for track dogs, because I'm going to make track dogs this time. I'm really going to do it. I really want this idea out of my head and into like a proper PDF for like people to play, because I love this idea. Can I say the concept? I think I can say the concept.
Yeah, why not? That'll be our next episode. You can say the concept, and then we'll explain about it in the next episode that's going to come out soon.
We will not explain about it in the next episode. I will not have it done by then, and even if I do, it will be too early for a post-mortem.
Well, fair. We'll go in depth. We'll do a proper pitch in a later episode. Actually, probably next episode we're probably going to be talking about the Critter Castle retreat that I'm going to, where I'll play a lot of tabletop games.
And then there will be like QCon this year as well. We'll have to do an episode about that. Track Dogs is, if you've ever played Sid Meier's Pirates or any of the Akela games that followed it, or if you've ever played 7th Sea, Track Dogs is trying to capture that like pirate game milieu, except it's the post-apocalyptic future. The sea is an enormous carpet of old-growth cedar forest that has encompassed the entire world, and the boats are trains.
Hang on, this is the train pirate sketch. My favourite comedy sketch bit of all time. I love this.
It was not even a sketch. That was like a pilot with Brian Blessed in it, and it
was
quite like that. I mean, train pirates. It's a silly idea, but it takes the idea more seriously than the train pirates pilot does.
Well, I mean, you say like takes it most that took it pretty seriously. To be fair, for like a.
Yeah, but it took it
comedy
seriously for like comedic purposes.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's like, there's a specific idea that I want to capture in like a specific... It's like, I want to capture the idea of the Sid Meier's Pirates milieu. Also, I want trains to be involved.
Wow.
So it's going to be fun. That's going to be my next project after QCon finally goes off, I think, because having had a proper look at Powered by the Apocalypse, I'm like, yeah, this is what I want to build train pirates in. Build track dogs, rather. So I'm excited. So yes, stay tuned for... Don't literally stay tuned. Don't just sit looking at our YouTube page, waiting for new episodes to come up, because you will starve to death.
Go watch like a Critical Role, or listen to the Roaring Trainers, or people who are better at this than we are. Fucking
or listen to fucking Taz, because I
listen to fucking Taz, because we talk about it all the time.
Yeah, the point is, stay subscribed, I guess. I really appreciate those of you who have stayed loyal to... We don't have a very large following, but we haven't really like lost a lot of the following for like not producing for quite a long time, and I really appreciate all of you. I'm sure Beth does as well. I'm not saying give us money, because I acknowledge that we have done nothing to deserve it. Well, from you, Beth has done a lot of things to deserve more money than I think she's being paid by her job, but like...
Well, yes, that's true, yeah.
For you. Other options to give us money in return for, or not in return for, like, stuff that you get, will probably be forthcoming. So, again, we can't guarantee when the next episode of House of Bards will be, but it really seems like we're all so brimming with hashtag content that we want to just vomit all over you, that if we don't make more episodes, we'll probably just burst. So look out for them at some point. We will do an episode about the next QCon. We will do an episode about the Critter Castle retreat that Beth and Maxie are going to. There will be stuff. Bye. Say goodbye, Beth.
Bye.
Except Big Mouth, which looks like Family Guy got put through, one of those nerve density diagrams?
Yeah.
With, like, they have the body parts scaled to how many nerves they have in them?
I mean, that's I mean, even that, like, really everything is cribbing on Matt Groening's, like, what was once a very unique style, like, Family Guy is just, like...
Well, I think it's weird, because it's like, it's sort of like Chinese whispers, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because it's like, Family Guy cribbed a lot off The Simpsons, but in like a specific way, and then people crib off Family Guy. So it's like, it's still the lineage of The Simpsons, but it doesn't look like The Simpsons really.
No.
And yet, there's still like some of that DNA very obviously in there, which is cool from like how art develops standpoint, but not cool from a please just make original content.
Yeah, I like it. It's been bad for adult animations. For like the only really like... I mean, even someone like Bob's Burgers, which I absolutely love and I think is one of the best, like, animated sitcoms out there, is still fundamentally, like, The Simpsons setup, which is, this is a family, and they get into hijinks, like, that...
Oh,
that
yeah,
is,
like plot-wise and stuff, that is, like, very, very
but, like, but Bob's Burgers is definitely, like, best like, Golden Age Simpsons, that's what Bob's Burgers is at the minute. But then, like, the only thing I can really think of that is, like, looks different is probably something like Archer, and even that's cribbing on stuff like,
Well, a lot of actually the content... Adult Swim had for a while that thing where it's like, we're going to take old animation properties that we own because nobody else wanted them, and we're going to, like, kit bash them into something else. Like, that was Space Ghost Coast to Coast and C-Lab 20... whatever. Like C-Lab 2020 or whatever. I kind of feel like Archer is like, well, what if we took that, but we made like an original show and the animation was better because it was actually like built for purpose as opposed to just like essentially a YouTube poop. Because that's what those shows are.
Yeah, but I mean, what we're talking, like, talk about Adult Swim, like, adult animation wasn't always like Family Guy, but worse. No. If that's even possible. Adult animation wasn't always just animated sitcoms. There was like a huge variation of it, and Simpsons was like part of that and stuff like that, and it was all very different looking and stuff like that, and you had like, like adult, like animation aimed at adults, but it was like high fantasy or science fiction or whatever, or a spy thriller like Archer was. But like they've kind of been lost to time now because they aired on cable networks at like 3 a.m. and they weren't The Simpsons, or they weren't like The Simpsons, or people just sort of forgot them, which is kind of sad. It wasn't always that way, and The Simpsons, as much as I love early Simpsons and I understand why it was so influential, kind of fucked over
we've
adult
got off
animation.
topic again.
We've went on a tangent.